It is a very special NFL Draft edition of Jets Final Drive. He is Zack Rosenblatt. I am Connor Hughes. Zack, we are through the first round, and it was an eventful one for the New York Jets. 3 new players are in here. It is David Bailey. It is Kenyan Sadiq. It is Omar Cooper. My friend, how was the night for you? I know it was a very, very, very busy one for myself.
Yeah, you always get suspicious when your team is the team you cover is done their picks in theory for the day, but you find out that they're not going to talk until the end of the round. Like that's what I was like. I try to convince myself it meant that they weren't necessarily trading up. But then they did. I mean, it was fun. Like we were talking before the pie, like it's an adrenaline rush because it's just like it's such a long, slow build up the day of the draft, and then you get there and it's like pretty rapid because you're doing so much. You're writing, you're podcasting, you're doing videos, you're doing interviews. But it was a fun day. I mean, the Jets now have had 3 first-round picks in 2 drafts in the last 5 years, and they're going to have 3 first-round picks next year. Like that's pretty crazy to think about. So we have a lot to talk about, obviously, but I enjoyed it. I know you had to cover 2 teams, so you did 5 draft picks.
Less enjoyment
is
less enjoyment. Yeah. I was joking because we all have our pre-draft thing, and every company you work for has the things that they want. What SNY asks for is totally normal. It's the so the hypothetical world, so you guys can go behind the lines. It's funny. I've done a couple podcasts now, and they've asked about the reporting aspect of it all and how you go about it. I didn't know people were fascinated by it. So for SNY, we do it for every single selection for Jets and Giants. We go an immediate reaction, which is 2 or 3 paragraphs. Then we do a grading the pick, which is 3 to 5 paragraphs. Then I'll do a stand-up video off of every single pick, for social media, which is awesome and sweet, and it works, and it's really fun. Where it gets complicated is we also have the pre-draft show that I'm on and the post-draft show, and at the end of the first round, I do a column on the Jets and the Giants. Bro, in a normal world where the Jets have a first-round pick and the Giants have a first-round pick, that's not an insane workload. It's that's normal. That's pretty good. When the Giants have 2 and the Jets have 3, and I'm sitting there oh my God, now I got to go on the 1240 Sports Night. My brain is mush. It was a bit much, but I will say I absolutely love the draft because it's just a craziness leading into it where you're trying to gather information in all different ways to try to figure out what's going to happen. Ultimately, some people are trying to smokescreen you. You're trying to go to other teams because the teams you cover aren't actually going to tell you the truth. And then you get to the event, and there are always curveballs that are thrown that absolutely nobody you talk to saw happen. And there were quite a few of them here in the first round of the NFL draft. And we are going to touch upon that and so much more on this episode of JFT. We thank you guys, of course, like we do every single episode, for joining us wherever you are joining us from, whether that is SNY.TV, whether that is X, or whether that is YouTube. But YouTube is the place to be. Constantly push you guys there because we have a live comment section that's running throughout the duration of the show. You can interact with Zack. You can interact with me. You can ask us questions about what might be coming in the second round, what could be coming in the third. Are the Jets going to trade back? What's going on? Or just honestly takes on the 3 players that the Jets have already selected. You can do that all on YouTube. So make sure you head on over to SNY's YouTube channel, subscribe to the YouTube channel so you can get access to our complete catalog of digital content. Zack, let's start with this one, which I think is the one that most people are on opposite sides of the fence with, and that is the David Bailey over Arvell Reese at number 2. I was a little surprised because normally at the second overall selection, this is just from a fan reaction, I feel like everyone's positive. You have players you want, but even when they go in opposite direction, you're not upset. It's still the second overall pick in the draft. I felt like reading through my mentions, which is a dangerous place to go 99.9% of the time, it felt like there were a lot of Jet fans that really, really wanted Arvell Reese and didn't necessarily want David Bailey.
Yeah, it was a higher range of people who wanted Reese versus the ones who wanted Bailey than I realized, honestly. Maybe the people who wanted Reese so badly weren't really as public about it. I thought for a while that there was a contingent of the Jets fan base that wanted Bailey, and I'm sure there is, and they're just not as loud because usually the people who are happy aren't as loud about it as the ones who are angry. So I'd say that, but yeah, I think some of it had to do with it was let's be honest, a wacky process leading up to it because of the canceled visit and the interviews and the Vegas odds were changing by the hour on draft day. it was a typically wacky Jets process, but like as you and I said the whole time, like while I think you felt this way too, like maybe I would have picked Arvell Reese over David Bailey. I still thought at the end of the day they were going to get a high quality NFL player. Like I think David Bailey at minimum is going to be a good NFL player for a long time, and there's something to be said about adding that. Like they decided to go with the pick that is a little less risky, but ultimately, like I was surprised by the negativity because I do think once the fans start to watch Bailey and if he is as productive as the Jets think he's going to be, then they're going to like him a lot. And obviously on the flip side is if he doesn't get those, close to 10 sacks that everybody keeps saying he's going to get, then they might not feel very good about that pick. And then, of course, he got drafted by the Giants. And now the Jets have to live with comparing him for the next 5 to 10 years, those two guys. And you're going to see across town what it's going to look like if Reese is a star, and the Jets are going to hear about it every day.
Maybe. So. I would push back on that slightly because I'm the Giants' use for Reese, and we'll touch on this quickly, and we can get to the process of how the Jets chose, but the Giants' plan with Reese is different than what the Jets' plan with Reese would have been. So in this alternate reality where the Jets decide to select Arvell Reese, he's going to start as an off-ball linebacker in their defense. But more and more and more and more, they were going to transition him to being a full-time edge rusher because they believed that he needed coaching, he needed fine-tuning, he needed to learn the technique of rushing around the outside, which makes sense. He had 104 pass rush snaps throughout college. It was going to take him some time, but once you taught him the position and his athleticism and that knowledge married together, you were going to have a player that was could potentially be a Micah Parsons level rusher around the outside. That's the athleticism and the talent and the skill that Reese has. He's just never been a rusher, so he doesn't know how to do it, so you got to teach it to him. The Giants don't have that plan for Reese. From talking to people, I'm talking to somebody very high up there this morning, and they said, he was an off-ball linebacker at Ohio State. He's going to be an off-ball linebacker for us. So they're basically going to play him inside next to Tremaine Edmonds, and then occasionally he'll blitz like anybody else would blitz. So I think that took me back a little bit because I originally was like, oh, man, how are they going to fit him and Abdul and Brian Burns? And, it's going to be great storylines for us because if David Bailey has 4 sacks as a rookie and Arvell Reese has 10 or whatever, you can start comparing them and pitting them against each other. But it sounds like they're literally going to be playing 2 different positions, and I don't know if I totally agree with that. All right, so let's talk about the process, Zach, to get to David Bailey here for the New York Jets.
Yeah.
They kept this thing under wraps, dude. Again, I've said this. I don't even know how many places I've been where I've talked right now going into the NFL draft. I am steadfast in my belief, and I learned this during the Sauce Gardner trade, or the Sauce Gardner drafting. If you go to the team that you cover and ask them what they're going to do, they're not going to tell you the truth. No matter how good of a relationship you have with those people, they're not going to tell you because they don't want that information getting out. So depending on if your relationship is really, really good with those people, you're putting them in an awkward spot where they either have to lie to you, not tell you the truth, or just not answer. So my stance with the NFL draft, and I think yours is too, is you just ask everybody else what they're hearing. Because as much as reporters dig, teams are digging tenfold because they need to know what's happening in and around them in order to gather the information so they know who's actually going to be there for them. That's their process, and that's what they do. They do their mock drafts, they do their intel gathering, they do everything they can to turn over every rock to figure out what's going to happen in and around them to put their own draft plans together. Nobody had any concrete idea what was going to happen with the Jets. And it started volleying and flipping to the point where we wrote a rumors and rumbling story on SNY about the NFL draft. Dude, everybody I talked to in the first round was like in the first 7 selections of the NFL draft was like, it's Reese, it's Reese, it's Reese, it's Reese, it's Reese. And I was like, all right, man, we're now talking about several general managers, handful of coaches, a lot of people dude, it's going to be Reese, going to be Reese, going to be Reese. All of a sudden, you started having the rumblings come out about, no, it's still Bailey, it's still Bailey, it's still Bailey. Peter Schrager was heavy on that. You had Todd McShay heavy on that when he flipped back again. So I started checking in with my guys. And my guys were now saying, I still think it's Reese, but now I'm thinking a little bit more, I don't know. And I was like, all right, now we're wishy-washy, but what's the reasoning? And the reason, well, they need the win-now player, whatever, it's wishy-washy. Dude, this went all the way to the point where we are an hour before the NFL draft. And I'm sending text messages out. And I had one coach who told me, he goes, dude, I am sitting in my war room right now with my general manager. I think it's Reese, and he thinks it's Bailey. And then at the same time, another general manager texts me, goes, hey, I'm really confident I still think it's Reese. So the Jets kept this thing so under wraps, dude, in a way that I don't think I've ever totally experienced before covering the NFL draft, which is saying something.
Yes, what I would say about that, like as you're saying it out loud, like it just sounds so ridiculous that this was the case for a number 2 pick where the number 1 pick has been determined for like 6 months. So, but like
It was
I don't
ridiculous.
blame the Jets for I don't blame the Jets for that. And somebody actually made a great point to me that like the NFL also wants the mystery. So like I'm sure there was an aspect of like the Jets not telling. I mean, the Jets don't want to tell anybody anyway, but I do think the NFL prefers when these teams don't make it clear.
We'll get Zack back in here in a second, but you back, Zack?
Yeah, I'm back. I don't know what happened there. But I was just saying, like the NFL wants the mystery at the top because it drums up interest in the draft, and I think there was a lot of conversation around this pick because it was such a push and pull tug of war between it's going to be Reese, it's going to be Bailey. I know some people viewed them picking Bailey as an evidence that there was leaks, but I do think this whole time this wasn't national insiders or reporters like getting the info from the Jets and then reporting it. I think it was what we've talked about. It's you talk to other teams, they have their opinions. And I think, if you ask like a head coach, and we both did this, head coach, GM, assistant coaches, like, so what do you think the Jets are doing? Oh, I think they're going to take Bailey. If you ask the follow-up question, why do you think that? It's not somebody told me that in their building. It's, logically this, and this. The Jets are trying to win now, blah, blah, blah. So that's why you had people like us thinking it was going to be Reese, and you had other people thinking it was going to be Bailey. I will say my wife my wife shamed me for getting it wrong. She said, I don't know how I can stay with someone who got the pick so wrong. Like, what will they think of me? So my wife is also mad at me for thinking it was going to be Reese. But, that's just the way this draft process goes. That's why I try never to make, like, definitive declarations on anything with the draft because it's such, like, lying season, silly season, smoke screens. Oh, yeah. To Muji's credit, he was, like, pretty blunt and honest afterwards. He's like, somebody asked him if he got any trade interest, and he said not any serious interest. Like, they didn't really get any calls. So it's not like they were trying to drum up trade interest. I think that was maybe the speculation of why it was acting that way. And he made it sound like, maybe this part wasn't entirely truthful. I don't know. It seemed like it was that they didn't really like crystallize that they were definitely picking Bailey until a few days ago, like just through conversations. He's like, we didn't want to make any decisions before we had to. And so it was a few days ago where they realized it was going to be Bailey, and it might have been before that based on the canceling of the visit timing and all that weirdness. But at the end of the day, they landed on what I think is going to be a good NFL player. Again, it's maybe not what I would have done, but I don't think it's a bad pick either.
No, and I actually don't disagree with Muji. I think this was something because it was such a unique NFL draft where, and we can talk about how they got to this process and why it's Bailey now, because it was such a unique process in that these two players were so close in their grade, and it really was a pick your flavor. And that's why when I was talking to certain people, they were like, oh no, it's definitely going to be Reese. Like I literally had a coach text me last night, it's like 11:30 or so, and he goes, I'm going to be honest with you, Connor. He goes, I'm sitting here in our war room. He goes, I am stunned still that they took Bailey. Like, I don't understand. He goes, everything that Reese does well, everything that Reese projects to be, it's what Aaron Glenn wants and what Aaron Glenn needs. I don't know how they went with Bailey. So, like, it's still one of those things where it's just a pick your flavor. Here's what the Jets battled between. In Arvell Reese, you have a player that has more upside than probably any defender in this year's draft. Physically, athletically, his bend when he learns it. It's just, he has the chance to truthfully be somebody that is a Micah Parsons level rusher. He is so young, right? Like 20-something years old, like super, super young. Not a lot of pass rush snaps. You see the potential of when you get your hands on him, what you can turn him into. That's what you have with Reese. On the other side, though, because the downside of Reese, though, is that it's a lot of projection. That's the downside with him, is it's projection. It's you don't know it. You haven't seen him rush 500 times throughout college to know what his repertoire is. You watch the drills of him going through the bag drills and he's standing up. It's because he's never really done it. He was an outside linebacker that just went out there to try to figure it out. So there's a lot of projection there. There's a lot of development there that's needed. You need to have a plan in place to truly work with him and stick with him in a program to eventually in year 2, 3, you might have the best player in the draft, but year 1, you're going to have a good player, not a great player. When you flip it over to Bailey, you have somebody that you know what he is. This guy is a pin his ears back, rush the passer, and he rushes the passer pretty damn well. Like, that's what he does. He hit 14 and a half sacks last year, which was first in football, 23 quarterback hits, 19 and a half tackles for a loss, 81 quarterback pressures, and a Pro Football Focus grade of 93.3. This guy is a beast as a pass rusher. And from the Jets' perspective, and they're deciding what they're going to do, they looked at this very similar to when Aaron Glenn was in Detroit with Trayvon Walker and Aiden Hutchinson. And it was, which one do you want? In Walker, there was a lot of projection. There was a lot of development needed. There was a lot of upside. He was a physical freak, but you needed to work with him. And then you had Hutchinson where you just knew who he was. You knew exactly what you were going to get. You knew exactly what he was going to become, and you knew what the floor was. It was a lot higher than the other guy. There's more of a bust factor with Trayvon Walker. There's much more of a bust factor with Arvell Reese than there is with David Bailey. And ultimately what the Jets decided was this was a player who they believe is tough in Bailey, dependable, has a skill set that they need, is, quote, extremely smart, one source told me about Bailey, and they can't wait to get him in their building.
Yeah, I'd also add, and it's something that I honestly should have factored in more, is they do have, I think everybody's focused on Frank Reich being on Stanford, even though he didn't coach David Bailey, but there's 3 guys they have on staff who are like assistant position coaches who were in the Stanford's building when he was there, so they at least had coaches who knew him on a personal level. But to play devil's advocate, I would say, is the part that you and I have also talked about throughout this process, is that Bailey is someone who needs a lot of work in the run game. And so you now have 2 edge rushers in Will McDonald and David Bailey who are not good against the run, and an argument can be made you might need to take them off the field on running downs, and we don't know what kind of leads the Jets are going to have this season. They won't be favored in a lot of games, certainly. So that would be the knock against it. Like the idea of Bailey's more of a win now player. Well, Reese, while he needs to be developed in some ways, was going to be an every down player, whereas I don't know that David Bailey is necessarily an every down player. I do like the rotation they have at edge rusher. You have Will McDonald, you have him, you have Joe Asai, you have Kingsley Enagbare. So that's like 4 guys you can rotate in and out and keep them fresh and all that stuff. But with the number 2 pick, maybe the Jets believe in their ability to develop him as a run stopper, and he plays more than we're realizing. But I want someone who is more likely to be a 3-down player than a 2-down player is what I would say.
That's my pushback as well. And that's why, and I actually talked to somebody over at the Jets about this. Like, we were texting, he hit me up. He goes, what'd you think of what we did? What'd you think of the 3 picks? And I'm always honest, man. Like, I'm not a smoke blower. Like, I'm gonna be as straightforward as I can. It was like, I love the Sadiq pick. I love when you got Cooper. I was like, but if it was up to me, I would have gone Reese over Bailey. And the justification isn't like, he's gonna be Micah Parsons. My thought process with this is exactly what you just said. There's twofold, Zach. It's one, I am very, very concerned based off of defensive coaches who I've talked to around the NFL. And again, this is the NFL draft. It's projecting. This dude could be Von Miller, and somebody's going to, I'm so sure Boy Green or MYJ Matt's going to clip this and make me look like an idiot in 5 years. But there are concerns around the NFL about David Bailey's ability to play the run and willingness to play the run. It's kind of like basketball with defense. Like, as long as you try, you can kind of do it okay. There's a concern there. Is there a willingness to stick your nose in and play the run as a run defender with David Bailey? You're fine if you have that and Jermaine Johnson on the other side. You're fine if you have that and another just edge-setting guy on the other side. That's fine. It's no big deal. You can have one guy that just specializes in rushing the passer. You can mask that by shading things over there. You'll be fine. When you have Will McDonald, who you pick the 5th-year option on, Will literally cannot play the run. And then you also have David Bailey, where now there are concerns with him playing the run. That's a former first-round pick and now a top 3 pick. How do you get those guys on the field at the same time on first and second down? That's my concern. Rushing the passer, big leads, dude, it's going to be like Robert Mathis and Dwight Freeney. Who gives a crap? I absolutely don't care. That's going to be unreal. But how many leads do the Jets have where those guys are going to be able to pin their ears back? How many times on first and second down are these teams just going to be like, here, hand it off. Here, hand it off. Here, go stretch, go stretch, go stretch. And then you're really going to keep taking those 2 guys off the field to put Asai and Enagbare on the field? It's just that part frustrated me where I didn't necessarily see the fit. And then when you actually analyze where the Jets' defense is, and again, I know they needed an edge rusher. It's Bailey's going to step in, and he's automatically their best pass rusher right now. Steps in the building, boom, he's their best pass rusher. This Jets defense, and you and I talked about it as you're texting this, when you look at that depth chart, man, they are not a piece away on defense. They have holes and they have voids at all 3 levels. Pass rusher, linebacker, back end. It's everywhere. They really do need a full-on rebuild. They got rid of their playmakers, whether that's Jermaine and Sauce and Quinn, and they're still working to refill it, and they haven't necessarily done that, dude. Arvell Reese, to me, and people got locked on this, he's not a fine-tuned pass rusher, not a fine-tuned pass rusher. Totally accurate. But he still can be an effective, really good player at a bunch of different levels to start. And you can let him rush the passer sometimes, play off-ball linebacker sometimes, drop back into coverage and let that athleticism shine. He could do so much that he felt like, and I said this to somebody over at the Jets, he, to me, felt like the chess piece that was missing. That Aaron Glenn, who's now calling defensive plays, can have a weapon on his holster that he can pull out and use in all these different ways. And you can now have a defensive line that you like, whether it's Asai and Abare, and then you have McDonald over there, the interior line with Briggs and Phillips, linebacker DeMario Davis, and now just have like this joker all over the field that's sometimes rushing from the A-gap, sometimes around the outside, dropping back, and you never know what he's going to do as you continue to work with him and develop him, and eventually he's more of an every down edge rusher than maybe this like do-it-all player in year one. That's the only thing that I push back on, and why personally I probably would have gone Reese over Bailey, kind of like you were.
Yeah, but again, like at the end of the day, even if he is a pass rush specialist, if he's an effective pass rusher, like the Jets didn't have that last year. Like their pass rush was one of the worst I've seen. Like you look at the numbers, they were last in pressure rate. I think they were 28th in sack rate. Will McDonald was the only player with more than 4 sacks, and 6 of his 8 sacks came in 2 games. Like this was a pass rush that's been destroyed ever since that Hassan Reddick trade, and they needed to infuse some pass rush into this defense. And while I like Osai and Anagabara, like those guys aren't like dynamite pass rushers necessarily. So like you needed to upgrade pass rush. And so I get it in that sense. And if he comes out and he has 8 sacks, 9 sacks, whatever it is, like 10 sacks is probably a lot to put on a rookie. But if he can get a lot of sacks as a rookie, maybe force a few fumbles, you need that pressure up front to help the guys on the back end and start forcing some turnovers. So like I get the logic, and you know, and if this is going to be a base 3-4 defense, I know they're going to be multiple. Like he's going to play a lot of outside linebacker. I don't know how much that he played at Texas Tech. I think he had his hand in the dirt a lot, and that's when he struggled against the run. So maybe him being stand-up will help him against the run. I don't know. But yeah, I like him as a player. I think he's going to be good, and I actually think he's going to be fun to watch. And like the battles he's going to have in training camp with like Olu and Membu are going to be fun, because that get-off is kind of like when Bryce Huff was here. Bryce Huff used to dominate in training camp because of his get-off, and so it's going to be fun to watch him in camp, I would say.
Appreciate you guys everywhere you are watching us from. Like we said, we push you always to the YouTube channel because that's where you can ask us comments throughout the duration of the show. If you guys want to do that, again, SNY's YouTube channel, subscribe to it. Watch our show over there on YouTube as much as we love you on SNY.TV and X, just because you can play in that comment section. And Sam, our incredible producer, is sitting there monitoring the entire section, sending questions to Zack, which we'll address throughout the duration of the show. Also want to point you guys to SNY, the television station, because we have a ton of content coming with you guys all throughout, including on Sunday, the day after the NFL draft. We're going to have our draft recap show. Connor Rogers is on that. I'm going to be involved in it. Bart Scott, Willie Colon, all of us kind of jumping in there with Steve Gelbs as well. Chelsea from the facility doing a bunch of stuff, and Nikki obviously out there in Pittsburgh. So we're going to have a ton of content there. That's our draft show on Sunday. So make sure you guys stay tuned to SNY to watch that. 3 first-round picks, like we said, for the Jets this year. Zack, the second one, were you surprised by Kenyan Sadiq? Like, did that one take you back a little bit at all? I heard a lot of him to the Ravens. I heard a lot of him potentially sliding a little bit further down in the NFL draft. I think when you talk to people, you see the athleticism, the freakish athleticism, which I don't even want to get into. Production, not necessarily their elite level in college. 51 catches, 560 yards, and 8 touchdowns. He had Dante Moore as a pretty good quarterback. So usually it's like, oh, you know, it was a tight end. He didn't have a quarterback. They were running, whatever. I was kind of surprised that the numbers weren't as good. But you can't coach that speed. You can't coach that athleticism. You can't coach that jumping. 99th percentile of the tight ends who tested at the NFL Combine with his athleticism, which is freaky.
Yeah, I mean, to answer your initial question, like, yeah, I was surprised when his name was the one they said, especially with Mekhi Lemon and Omar Cooper on the board at the time. But, like, I get it. Like, I think value-wise, it was a great value there. Like, out of, you know, if the David Bailey pick was the safe pick, in quotes, I think Kenyan Sadiq was, like, the big swing pick. Like, he's a guy he's not a perfect prospect, but he is a freak. You know, he's a little undersized for a tight end. He's, like, 6'3". He didn't have a lot of production in college. He was only really a starter in his last year. So, like, he had some drop issues. Like, there's some questions there. But I really like the idea, especially, like, it's hard to talk about Sadiq without acknowledging that they traded back to get Omar Cooper. So, like, I think at the time, a lot of fans were upset with the Sadiq pick because they didn't draft Mekhi Lemon in particular, but because you didn't draft a receiver there. But I think if you factor in that they got Cooper in the end and they only had to give up a fifth round pick to go up and get him, like, I think that I like the Sadiq pick more in retrospect, knowing that. I would say, you know, I texted with another coach from another team who did a lot of work on Sadiq. He was really high on him. He wanted his team to get them. He called him Vernon Davis. said his run after the catch and contact balance are elite. His biggest concern was his motor, but he thinks like a good coach can fix that. And he had the drops, but this coach wasn't really concerned with the drops because he thinks that's, again, coaching. And I've heard good things about Alfredo Jenkins, who's their new tight ends coach. So I think the question is more, we've covered a lot of Jets offenses where the offensive coordinator didn't really know how to use a guy creatively. Like, well, I'm not saying Frank Reich won't, but like we need to see it. Like, so will Frank Reich use him in a way that it makes him the most effective? Like, he's a unique player. You can play him with Mason Taylor. I don't think this impacts how they view Mason Taylor at all. He can play big slot. He's ran like a 4.3 at 250 pounds. Yeah. Like that's pretty insane. So I keep thinking about training camp. Like, he's gonna be fun to watch in training camp. Like, he's gonna be a guy that I think Jets fans will grow on Jets fans if he lives up to his potential, which obviously isn't guaranteed. But again, for me, it's hard to talk about Sadiq without coupling it up with Omar Cooper. How I described it on my other podcast, Flight Plan. We went live at midnight last night. But like, if you were to swap and say the Jets picked Omar Cooper at 16 and they traded up to get Kenyan Sadiq at 30, I think everybody is happier today. And so like,
Losing
I think,
their mind,
yeah, so I don't think it's as big of a deal it's being made out to be. I like what they're doing on offense. You're building an offense of young guys who are all going to be here next year when you add the other quarterback. And you add him, and we'll get to Cooper specifically later, but you add him, you add Cooper, you have Garrett, you have A.D. Mitchell, you have Mason Taylor, Breece Hall, Isaiah Davis. Like, it's a solid group of pass catchers and a solid offensive line up front.
Yeah, look, their thought process, because I reached out, again, I kind of sent out some text messages this morning. Yesterday it was so crazy, just kind of recapping the draft, talking to some people about what they want. Versatility was the big thing I got back from my Jets people about. Like, this is the other thing. You can also, the Jets have no problem talking about the players once they're drafted. Then they'll explain but the Jets have been very good with that. Like, a big shout out to them. Like, they're very good at explaining their why, which is always helpful as a reporter. But, they're like his versatility. His physicality is a big one. The fact that he has no problem sticking his nose in there and blocking. They believe he can play the Z, F, and Y, which gives them a ton of flexibility. But I know receiver was a big thing, and Jets wanted to get it. We're going to get to Omar Cooper in a second here. But the Jets viewed this one going into the draft as a top 20, probably, I would say, a definitely top 16 situation. There were two receivers worthy of going there, and that was Carnell Tate and it was Jordan Tyson. After Tate and Tyson, there was a gap between you got to the next group of players. That doesn't mean the next group of players are poor. That doesn't mean the next group of players suck. Obviously, the Jets traded up to get one of those players, but the value just didn't match the selection. So I genuinely do believe that at number 2, the Jets went with the player that they believed was the best player available on their board. And here at 16, with those receivers gone, with Tate going very, very early to the Tennessee Titans, and then Tyson going to the Saints, which most people expected, they went back to that BPA, the best player available. And they went out there and they got a guy who's going to impact the game. He's going to need time to develop as a tight end. All tight ends do. The acclimation period from college to pro at the tight end level is so under talked about, but it's why you don't usually see people do what Brock Bowers did, where he just steps on the field and he's unbelievable. Like, it's going to take some time usually for a lot of these guys. But the Jets now are creating this offense where they can put people in a bunch of different places, and they have weapons where you can have Mason Taylor in line as your tight end. You could have Sadiq in the backfield. You could have Sadiq as a slot. You could have Sadiq split wide. You also now have Cooper in the mix, and Garrett Wilson in the mix, and A.D. Mitchell in the mix, and Arian Smith, who they can develop as the guy who's going to take the top off the defense and play 5 or 6 snaps a game just going deep. Like, you're starting to see those pieces come together. And Sadiq is an interesting weapon that, again, did I love him at 16? No, I didn't love him at 16. But I think when you look at all the other options that were there, Maui Noah's gone. But wasn't Vega gone too? Vega was before the Jets, didn't he?
Yeah, he was picked right before them by the Ravens, yeah.
Yes, yeah. So like, I think Vega would have been a good selection there, the Penn State guy. I think that would have made a lot of sense. But Vega's off the board. Maui Noah's off the board. Like, there's a lot of these players that are there that we would have been like, oh, that makes sense, that makes sense, that makes sense. They went. Mansour Delaney, gone off the board. Like all of these players were gone at the point. So it's like, what did you want the Jets to do? So this Sadiq one, I love. Again, it's more of it's funny. We got into the argument, not you and I, but the argument of David Bailey versus Arvell Reese. And it was like, well, take the more proven player in Reese. Well, with their second first-round pick, the Jets went with the upside player in Sadiq, where you see all of that athleticism, 43.5-inch vertical, 4.39 speed at the tight end position, 6'3", 240, which isn't your prototypical 6'5", 250 tight end, but still pretty good size for a guy to go out there and play football. So this pick, to me, Zach, was one of my favorites of the first round for the Jets. Like I liked it, honestly, more than Bailey. And I think I like it a little bit more than Cooper, too, just because I think with Frank Wright, you have somebody who knows how to develop people, and you have a professional in the room there at offensive coordinator, and I can foresee how the Jets want to use him.
So what I would add to that last point is that
I was ready for you to say what I would push back on. What I would push back on with that.
No, I haven't completely disagreed with you yet, so we haven't had our usual fights. But I'd say the offensive staff, especially Reich, from what I understand, was like pushing for Sadiq. Like they really wanted him. And everything I've heard since they drafted him is that they're just like over the moon that they got him. Like that, this offensive staff, Seth Ryan, Frank Reich, Alfredo Jenkins, the tight ends coach, like they just feel very excited about what they can do with him in this offense. And, they obviously needed a pass catcher yesterday, and they got 2 of them. And I think part of why everybody was nervous is because you got the tight end first. But I've alluded to this with you and on the other podcasts, and maybe we should have like more aggressively predicted it. But like, of course they picked a tight end. Like after 2 straight years of everybody mocking them a tight end in the first round, of course the year they draft one is the year that nobody is mocking it to them. So it's just like the most Jets thing that they waited until after everybody thought they were getting a tight end. They could have got Brock Bowers, Tyler Warren, instead got their 2 tackles. Now they get the tight end. They have 2 tight ends, and the Jets don't have a rich history of drafting them, but I think between Mason Taylor and Sadiq, odds are at least one of them will pan out, and maybe both of them.
Finally, here's Zack. We're going to talk about the last of the first-round picks for the Jets, Omar Cooper, because you're right. I think you described it perfectly, that when you look at this as, say, just Sadiq and just Bailey, the Jets draft looks one way. When you then loop in Cooper and realize, like, oh, yeah, they also got the wide receiver, it looks a little bit different. Omar Cooper, someone right out from Indiana, Fernando Mendoza's go-to guy, somebody that was mocked to the Jets a lot. We actually had him in our mock draft, which I loved our beat writer mock, dude. The fact that the only pick that was actually accurate of the 32, and we didn't like bring on schlubs here. Like these are the best of what they do, and it just shows you how crazy the NFL draft is and how things really went off the rails. I think when both Jeremiah Love went 3 and then Carnell Tate went 4, that's when everything just what hit the fan, was when that happened. We're going to talk more about draft surprises here in a little bit, but our beat writer mock, Brooke Hughes, my 2.5-year-old daughter, selecting Fernando Mendoza first overall was the only selection that was a nail on the head. The other one we got was Omar Cooper, but I had Cooper at 16. I didn't have him at 30.
Yeah.
All right, so let's talk here about this one, Zach, with Omar Cooper. Talented receiver, 69 catches, 937 yards, 13 touchdowns a season ago. A freak after the catch. I think it was like 400 plus of his 900 plus yards came after the catch a season ago. So that was kind of freaky from him. He is a slot receiver, though. That's where he played 99%. I think maybe even like 100% of his snaps in 2025.
No, it wasn't that high.
I thought it in last year.
It wasn't 90%. No, I think
or maybe it was his yards
70% of the time.
Yeah, I thought it was a lot more than that.
I'll look it up while you're
I saw something
talking.
that was like, yeah, do that for me. Because I thought I saw something that like an insane number of his snaps came from in the slot last year. Because I remember talking about that. But Cooper is somebody who's played the majority of his tenure there in the slot, whether it's 70 or 90%. We'll see what the final number is there as Zack Googles and looks it up for me. The Jets went out here and they saw a player. Now, I know this from talking to people with the Jets. They see him as, while he's best in the slot, he does have some flexibility to go outside. But when you're now piecing together the Jets receiving trio, you have A.D. Mitchell as your true X, like your big-bodied, physical dude. That's your X, A.D. Mitchell. The Jets keep speaking so glowingly about this guy. Like, they genuinely love A.D. Mitchell, and they're really happy that they got him. Crazy they got him in 2 first-round picks.
76% of his snaps were in the slot.
Okay, cool. All right, 76% of his snaps
obviously high,
in the slot.
But yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So slot receiver there, obviously. Now you have Cooper who can play in the slot, and Garrett Wilson who has inside flexibility. From my understanding, he doesn't really like playing inside. Like Garrett wants to be more outside, moved around the formation, all that fun stuff. He doesn't want to just be a slot like we saw with Cooper Kupp, or how the Jets actually originally envisioned Garrett Wilson when they drafted him, because they thought Corey Davis was my X, Elijah Moore is going to be the Brandon Cooks, and then Cooper Kupp is going to be, or Garrett Wilson is going to be the Cooper Kupp as that freak in the slot. Now they have their Omar Cooper in the slot. They have Garrett Wilson moving all over, and then A.D. Mitchell as your slot, or as your big X. Here's how I evaluate what the Jets have done to this point, Zach. When they went out there and they drafted Sam Darnold way back when, 3rd overall, and when they went out and they drafted Zach Wilson 2nd overall, the Jets' process during that was get the quarterback, and then we'll build the roster around the quarterback. Everything that they have done, a little bit with what the holdover is from Robert Saleh and Joe Douglas, free agency this year, especially this draft, and now with all these picks they have coming up in 2027, specifically on offense, it's like they are building the offense now so that then when they get the young quarterback and they throw him into the roster, or they take the young quarterback and they throw him into the mix and they make him their quarterback, he's in a situation where he can grow, develop, and thrive. That's what they're trying to do. They have the offensive line, and they can still add to it. They might even add to it here, whether it's Colton Hood or they end up going with an interior offensive lineman here in the NFL draft. But they have an offensive line that's pretty good. Is it perfect? No. But when you're talking about outside at left, Olu, then Parham, then Myers, then Tittman, and then Membu, that's a pretty good offensive line. I mean, it has a chance to be really, really good, but at the baseline, that's a good offensive line. You have a backfield of 3 running backs, and they're going to try now after this draft to get something done with Breece Hall, which we're going to talk about when we do our draft recap show here on JFD. But they've got the running backs with Breece Hall, who they're hoping to extend, Braylon Allen, and Isaiah Davis. You now have a 2-headed attack at tight end when it's Mason Taylor and Sadiq, and also Jeremy Rucker's still floating around there too as kind of like that blocking dude, but still a serviceable option as a check down. And now you have the receivers, Mitchell, Cooper, and Wilson. When you put a quarterback in, this isn't going to be like when Sam Darnold was throwing to Deontay Burnett and Jermaine Kearse. This isn't going to be like when Zach Wilson was out there trying to figure it out with the misfits that he was his first year in 2021, whenever they drafted him. I get the years mixed up in 21. This is not going to be like that. They are creating as good of a situation. I don't think this is hyperbole, and I don't think this is seeing things through green-colored glasses. Of the teams that you expect to be selecting within the first 5 to 10 picks of next year's NFL draft, who are going to be quarterback-needy teams, I do not believe that there is a better situation out there to groom a young quarterback than the Jets. And you can loop Frank Wright into that, the offensive line, the receivers, the tight ends, and the running back. I truly believe the Jets have generated and built that over the last couple of years here.
Yeah, just to talk about Cooper a little more specifically, a couple things. Like, he is phenomenal after the catch, as you mentioned. I think he's been compared to Debo. Like, I think he's kind of the prince that was promised with Malachi Corley, is what I would say. Like, I feel better about Omar Cooper's ability to make plays after the catch than Malachi. I mean, he's obviously faster and he's got more size. From what I've heard, people feel like he can play more inside and outside than you would think for someone who played primarily in the slot in college. He forced like the second most missed tackles among all drafted wide receivers over the last 5 years. Like, his missed tackle rate is pretty ridiculous. And then he had, that catch he had against Penn State was the catch of the year. And a guy who can make clutch catches like that, that's the kind of guy you want on your team. Like, he has a proven ability to come up in big moments. He was the number 1 target on the national champion for the number 1 overall pick at quarterback. And so I don't have any issue, obviously. And I know Glenn highlighted this, and it's overblown a little bit, but like bringing a guy in from a winning program like that, like fresh off a national championship, knows what it takes to get to that spot. You add him to Garrett Wilson, you add him to A.D. Mitchell. Like, I like that wide receiver room a lot more today than I did yesterday, obviously. And I don't think they're necessarily done adding a wide receiver. I don't know if it'll be on day 2 necessarily, but as you said, like, at the end of the day, they're building for the future. Like, this is really good supporting cast for Geno Smith, and I do think he's going to do a good job of distributing to all these weapons. And you could argue about what the ceiling is of Geno Smith as your quarterback or whatever, but at the end of the day, this is a pick for next year, because if you look at all the guys you named, other than Breece Hall, everybody is under contract for next year. Breece Hall and Braylon Allen are the only 2 that are not under contract for next year. They still need to re-sign Joe Tittman, which I think they will. But other than that, like, everybody's under contract for next year that matters. And so, like, there's something to be said about that. You have a year to develop Kenyan Sadiq. You have a year to develop Omar Cooper, to develop A.D. Mitchell, to develop Mason Taylor, to get Membu to the next step, to get Fashanu to the next step, and maybe if they draft another offensive lineman or whatever. Like, all these guys are going to have another year of seasoning before you drop that rookie quarterback in. And as you said, it'll be a positive situation. Like, if everything works out this season to what the Jets are comfortable with, then you have Frank Reich coming back. And that's a infrastructure that you believe in. And so that's ultimately they're putting the right pieces in place. And whether these guys pan out or not or whatever, like, there's a lot of logic to everything they're doing.
Let me pose this one to you. I think both of us are on the same side of the fence here on this one, is that I had absolutely no issue with them trading up to get Cooper either. I mean, there was a chance Cooper was going to be there at 33,
but 5th round pick.
Yeah, I have no problem with that whatsoever.
By the way,
again,
just to cut on that real quick, like the Jets deserve credit because it seemed pretty clear to me that the Bills were about to draft him because they immediately traded out after the Jets drafted Omar Cooper. So, like, how many times have we covered drafts where the Jets got swooped on somebody they wanted at the last minute because everybody knew that's who they wanted? Like, so credit to Muji for jumping ahead of the division rival, only giving up a 5th-round pick. Like, I haven't seen anybody criticizing the trade, but I don't see why you would. Like, it's a 5th-round pick. Like, you move up, you go and get the guy. He wouldn't have been there at 33. And you have the 44th pick. Like, if you don't have the 44th pick, like maybe it's a different convo, but you still have the ability to get somebody really talented today or trade back and get more picks. So,
what's your opinion? And like either of us freaking know this. Like, we're not going to know this answer for 2 or 3 years. But would you have preferred David Boston? And would you have preferred Denzel Boston over Cooper? Because I think that was the one that you and I were going back and forth on. Again, not disagreeing, but like when you look at what the prototypical Frank Reich receiver is, it is Boston. It's big body, physical, just, gone out physical dudes. Let's beat some dudes. Like, big dudes beat up little dudes. Let's go do that. Would you have gone him over Cooper? I gear towards no, because I think this might have been in Cooper. I think this might have been the Jets' first need-based pick of the draft, where they picked somebody that was a need that kind of filled a hole in the roster. But I think when you look at their receiving trio of Mitchell, Wilson, and Cooper, they all complement each other than if they had added Boston, where Boston would have just been a very similar player to A.D. Mitchell. And then I guess you have 2 big guys and Garrett's playing more in the slot. But I think with Cooper now, you have somebody that's a bit more versatile, flexible, and fits what the Jets needed.
For me, it's even less about like the body types not being a good match or whatever. Like, for me, it's just the Jets and teams in general, I think, get into a bad habit of just like trying to fit like the puzzle pieces into the right place or whatever. But I think what is more important is just getting quality pass catchers, like getting guys who are going to be good. And so, like, I feel more confident that Omar Cooper is going to be a good NFL player than I do Denzel Boston. And so whatever you want to say about size and fit and all that stuff, like I go with the better player. The Jets just need to get better players. And I think his ceiling is also higher than Boston's. Like, if you want to say the body types, like, I think Boston does make a lot of sense. But ultimately, like, I like the idea of you bring in the best possible pass catchers and then you figure out how you're going to use them after. Like, that's why you get Kenyan Sadiq as well. Like, you get these 2 guys. These are, we the Jets felt was the best pass catcher on the board at the time, and we want to get him. Without knowing that they were going to go up and get Cooper, like at 16, I personally would have picked Lemon, like, at that time, because I really like him, and I think he's going to be just a solid NFL player. He's a good run blocker for his size. I know he's not a great athlete. But again, like I said, having the knowledge now that they also got Cooper, like, I actually like the Sadiq pick more. So,
yes.
Yeah, but yeah, to answer your question, I prefer Cooper over Boston. I would have understood if they picked Boston, but I think he's less clean of a prospect than Cooper is.
I agree. Regarding Lemon, I looked him up. I hit up actually an offensive coordinator and was like, dude, so I was like, I feel like back when I was originally doing mocks, it was the big 3 and Lemon was always in there. And I feel like he's kind of fallen off. Like, I haven't heard from him. I was like, what's the deal? And he said to me very, very bluntly, he loves him, but there's just a limitation to him. He's kind of like a poor man's Carnell Tate. So, like, if you think Carnell Tate's going to be a great number 2 receiver, you think Lemon's going to be a good number 2 receiver. He goes, that's fine. He goes, if you have a number 1, like the Jets probably would have with a Garrett Wilson, or the Giants could have with Malik Neighbors, like, that makes sense to Adam because he's your number 2. He's just not somebody that they believed was going to be, your upper echelon wide receiver 1 potential. There just wasn't anything about that. Moving on here a little bit, Zach. It's the NFL draft, so there's always surprises. Do you have any that jumped out to you that were a big one? For me, I think it starts absolutely at 4 with the Tennessee Titans. And I know this one shook the Giants building because that's when they were like, holy crap, we're about to get Arvell Reese. Surprised the hell out of me when I looked down and saw the text message that, like, dude, the Titans just took Carnell Tate. Bro, I talked to so many people about Carnell Tate. And I wrote this, and it's true. Like, and I even checked in on it after Tate went 4 to the Titans. I would say there were 31 other teams in the NFL that were not as high on Carnell Tate as the Tennessee Titans. Like, they viewed this guy as a super safe, super clean prospect, but a number 2 receiver. Like, that's what he is. To see him go 4 to the Titans, considering the other options that were on the board, with the other concerns that Tennessee has and the issues that they have, Bro, I would make the argument that Reese was a better pick there. Corner was a better pick there. I would even go as far as say an offensive lineman would have been a better pick there if it was Fanu or something like that.
Yeah.
I was stunned to see Tate go 4 based off of everything I heard about him going into this draft.
Yeah, that was, I guess give Saleh credit. He sent out a bunch of smoke screens. I don't think there was a single person that credited. That predicted.
Saleh wanted him. If you saw that clip of Saleh, did you see that at the ESPN or NFL Network? I guess it's the same thing.
No, I didn't.
They had the Titans war room. Bro, like we covered Saleh forever, dude. Like you see him after the draft, he's fist pumping. Yeah, like one of those things. I guess we haven't seen the phone call yet, but like everyone's high-fiving, and then there's like Robert just standing in the war room, like, rocking. I'm not saying it's as bad as Sean McVay when they took Ty Simpson, but I saw that and was like, I don't know if that was Robert's guy. I don't know. I mean, look, they needed holes. They needed a wide receiver. Obviously, they want to help their young quarterback, but that was that one shook me, dude. That one very much surprised. Dude, the Jets weren't sure if they wanted him at 16, and this guy went 4. Yeah. Like that's crazy.
Yeah, I was more confident he would go higher than you were, just because I think there was more teams that liked him. I think there were teams that didn't, obviously, but it makes sense in theory. Like they were trying to surround Cam Ward with the best possible environment to succeed, as we're talking about the Jets for whoever they drop in there. And now you have Wandale, you have Carnell Tate, and you have Calvin Ridley, whatever he has left. It's a little bit better of an offense, so I get that to that degree. I mean, the biggest surprise for me though was Simpson, who you just alluded to. Like I thought the Rams made sense. I did not think he would go 13. Like I don't get that, frankly. Like I get, like if you take a step back, I get it in theory, but like I don't think a team was gonna. The Jets weren't gonna pick him at 16. Like I still feel confident about that. And so you don't have a team unless somebody's trading up. You don't have a team who's going to consider him until 21 at the earliest. It didn't sound like the Steelers were going to seriously consider him. I don't think the Browns were going to pick him. And so that leaves you with, are the Cardinals going to trade back into the draft? Basically, is the only other one. And so, look, at the end of the day, the Rams, they generally do the right things all the time. So it's hard to blame them for doing anything. And if you believe in him as a future franchise quarterback, he has the ability to sit behind Matthew Stafford for 2 years. I just think they're in a Super Bowl window right now. I think they have either the best or like close to the best Super Bowl odds for next season. And you just drafted a player who's going to play 0 snaps for you this year. So that was surprising to me. And it's not that I'm like very negative on Simpson. I just do not see him as a first round prospect. If you just look at all the knocks against him, like even beyond the inexperience, he's 6'1" without arm strength. And he has pretty good accuracy, and he's like pretty mobile, but he's not like great at anything, I don't think. So that one was a surprise. Like I didn't expect to see that name come up when the Rams. I thought the Rams were going to pick Lemon or an offensive lineman, and they picked a quarterback, and so Lemon. Other than that, like it wasn't like shockers. Like like Vega went kind of where everybody projected. I think the offense. Everybody talked about there being a run on offensive lineman that happened. Caleb Banks went pretty high, but I actually had heard like the day before the draft that the Vikings really liked him. The Steelers thing was the funniest thing that happened, I should say, other than the Sean McVay press conference. The Steelers being on the phone with Mekhi Lemon as the Eagles trade up to draft. Like that's something that would happen to the Jets. Like the Jets were like the least mocked team in the NFL yesterday, I think, compared to you look at the Rams and you look at what happened with that. Like being on the phone with a guy to tell him we're gonna draft you with the next pick, like you got overzealous. Clearly, the Eagles jump ahead of you, take him. Like if you see the video, like Lemon looks so confused about what was happening. Somebody comes running over, like the Eagles are calling. They just traded up for you, and he's like, "What?" Like I've never seen anything like that, and for it to happen on live TV is just wild. And the Steelers are, they're in such a weird. It feels like it's going to be a weird, bad season for the Pittsburgh Steelers, and don't get a lot of what they did this offseason. And so, like, that wasn't like a shock or anything, but it felt like they were thrown for a loop, and they drafted an offensive line. I was texting with our Steelers writer, and he was like, they've drafted 3 offensive tackles in the first round in the last 4 years, and I'm not sure if they have 2 starting offensive tackles still. Like that's like where they're at, because this guy's like a raw prospect. Broderick Jones is like injured and a mess, and Troy Fautanu is like okay, so. The Steelers are in a weird spot. Other than that, you look at the rest of the picks in the first round, there wasn't anything shocking. Like I think a lot of these picks made a lot of sense otherwise.
The only thing that I would push back on the Ty Simpson pick for is that Sean McVay has, obviously, this isn't groundbreaking news, there's no hot take here. Sean has earned the benefit of the doubt to
but he maybe didn't want him though.
That's my point. It's like if Sean was in that war room and he's like, guys, look, Matt Stafford's coming back. The last 2 years with the roster as it's been currently constructed, we've gotten on the doorstep of this thing. I mean, we were a Jalen Carter pressure away from beating the Eagles the year that they won the Super Bowl. We were right down to the wire last year as well. Like this is a situation here where like we feel like we have a championship team with Matt Stafford, and we know Matt Stafford's coming back. But we probably only got Matt for one more year. We know where we are here. I think this guy can create a situation where we've got the Aaron Rodgers to Brett Favre, where we've got the Patrick Mahomes to Alex Smith, where we've get somebody, I can develop him for a year, teach him for a year, groom him for a year, and then guess what? He's going to take over, and we're going to have another sustained level of success with the Rams. If Sean is in the war room and he's saying that, you go, you know what? We like the offensive lineman. We like Lamone. We like this guy. We like that guy. You know what? We're taking the quarterback. Like, we're getting it. When you got Sean acting like he is regarding this quarterback, and again, I don't know if he loves the prospect, but he just wanted a win-now player to try to get him over the hump. I don't know. We've seen that before. But, bro, like...
It's probably what it is.
Press conferences, but the press conferences, all that stuff.
No matter what, it's a bad look.
And he's been doing this long enough. Like, if it was Aaron Glenn, I would almost understand it because he's a new coach. If it was... anytime first-time guy, Mike LaFleur, like I would get a first-time head coach. Like I know Aaron's in year 2, but still he's a young head coach in the NFL. You kind of get it. You give it to him. Sean knows what he's doing, dude. Like he knows what that sounds like. He knows what that looks like. He knows where every camera in the Rams building is. Like he knows he knows the vibe this is giving off.
And acting that way just like draws attention away from this kid who's had this like special moment in his life. And I'm sure Sean McVay's going to come back today and realize what happened. Like maybe he didn't realize how he was coming across in the moment, but like just being like, well, Matthew Stafford's our starter. He's going to compete with Stetson Bennett. Like it was like very, it was unfortunate that the tone came across that way because like, I don't know, like even the phone call that he had with Ty Simpson, he was just like, hi, like that's how he started it. But so that, whatever. But I mean, at the end of the day, like, as we said, like, it'll probably work out because it always does for the Rams. Like, they just always seem to make the right decisions. So you like always give them the benefit of the doubt. But yeah, I thought his range was anywhere from that Rams pick. Like, you could have convinced me he was going to drop to the Steelers pick in the second round. Like that, I thought he could have gone from 13 to 60. And you could have, and I would have believed you. So I'm curious to see. There was a lot of like BS Carson Beck buzz right before the draft where it's like, oh, he could sneak into the end of the first round. Like I tried not to comment on it because I'm just like, that just feels like somebody doing an agent a favor. Like I don't see how that's possible. I just don't think Carson Beck has it. He sounds like he's very smart, but I just don't think he has it as an NFL quarterback. So maybe I'll be surprised and somebody will pick him in round 2. But like that noise, I was like, well, if they're talking about Carson Beck in the first round, then Ty Simpson is certainly going in the first round.
Oh yeah. You want to take some fan questions? You want to do that?
Yeah, let's take a couple.
Do that, and then we can preview the second round a little bit here, which is going to start in, what is it? When's it actually start today? 7 p.m.?
7, I believe, yeah.
Okay, so 7 p.m. So it's 11 o'clock. So yeah, what is that? 8 hours? 7, 8. So yeah, 8 hours. Rest of the draft, Jets picks 44, 103, 140, 228, 242. This question is, can we go more in depth on the 44th selection in terms of what I think the Jets will do? So I look at the team right now and what do they need help with? I would say I don't know if 44 is going to be where they go because I don't think the prospect is going to match the value, especially if the Giants go with McDonald early. Interior defensive line is a spot I could see the Jets target. That's something that I think they could beef up just as an eventual replacement for Briggs and Phillips because you're probably going to need to continue to fortify the middle. They have Sweat too, but still. I think you still want to fortify the interior of the defensive line. Cornerback is a big one. Colton Hood, Terrell, both there. McCoy, I'd be worried about that long term just because you don't know how screwed up the knee is. In fact, I told you one team I had completely took him off the draft board. But cornerback, I'd keep an eye on. Safety, I would keep an eye on. There's value there to be had. Receiver, I wouldn't rule out as well. Interior defensive line, too. So I think those would be spots I'd look pretty early on there with probably a hedge and lean there, Zack, towards safety and wide receiver. Safety and corner.
I agree with all that, but I also like the pick that I think I would be most excited about if I was a Jets fan is actually a linebacker, Jacob Rodriguez from Texas Tech. I think it depends on what you think about Jamie and Sherwood and whether you want to keep him and all that stuff, blah blah blah. But I just think Rodriguez is like a really good athlete, He's a great leader, and he forced like so many turnovers at Texas Tech last year, and he'd have the ability to learn from Demario Davis for a year before taking over as like the green dot guy, and it would give you the ability to trade Jamie and Sherwood if you want to, and so I really like that idea. As you mentioned, like corners, like I don't think Colton Hood will get to 44, but I think they'd have a hard time passing him up if he's there. You mentioned Caden McDonald. I doubt he would make it that far. Interior offensive line, Emmanuel Pregnon, Chase Besantis are the two big guys there. And then, like you said, receiver, like there's still some really intriguing receivers. Like if Denzel Boston keeps following or Jeremy Bernard or something like that, like I could see those. But my choice would be linebacker, but my prediction would be defensive back, I would say.
I'm right there with you. I think, especially with the way that the first round has fallen,
yeah,
there are some really good players. I mean, there was a lot of buzz about Colton Hood potentially going top 20. Like it was a bit of a surprise that he slipped into the second round. Same thing with Avery. I think, unfortunately, is after Delane, there was a drop-off between. It was going to be McCoy, but then McCoy's injury scared some teams off. But there's also opportunities here for the Jets where if they want to move up into the second round, like move up a few picks or move up a few selections just to make sure that they get their guy, I think that's certainly a possibility for them of what they want to do. What about this one, Zach? This one's a question from YouTube from Buntero 23, which is what about the possibilities or prospects of moving down from 44 to take a late third or early fourth? I think that if that were to happen, Darren Muji should hand in his resignation letter, and that should never happen. I think that their option should be to move up to 34 and then call it a day. No, I'm just kidding.
And then do their press conference immediately. Yeah.
Yeah, and then say, oh, by the way, actually, yeah, trade all of their day 3 picks to move up like 10 spots in the second round and then make your selection. No, I think this will be something that the Jets explore. I do. I don't think that this draft is one that's particularly rich in terms of talent, so it's not like you're like jumping at the bits to go get certain guys. It's almost like there's a lot of solid players and NFL players in this class, but not necessarily great ones. So this is a good second round, third round, fourth round. This is a really good opportunity for you to get your depth so that if something happens to Garrett Wilson, you feel like you're pretty comfortable to turn to this guy. This is a situation where if something happens to Brandon Stevens, you got a corner that can move up. Something that happens to Minka Fitzpatrick, you got to say, like, find your depth that's going to improve your special teams and make you a more well-rounded team. And you do that with more swings than less. And I think it is something the Jets will explore.
Yeah, I mean, I think it makes. I mean, they, like we mentioned, they lost their 5th-round pick in that other trade. They have 2 7ths. They have the 2 4ths. Yeah, I think there's some logic to trading back, but I also, as you mentioned, like if there's a prospect you really like, I also am not opposed to trading up and giving up one of those 4ths if you have to. Like just add the best possible players. Like next year's the year where you're going to have 1 million draft picks. I think there's not a lot of like starting slots on the roster right now, even if like the depth is pretty bad at a lot of spots. So I'm just curious. Like the interesting thing to me about day 2 is you're going to find out like how they feel about certain guys on the roster right now. Like, so if they draft a guard at 44, that tells you like maybe they're not going to start Josh Myers or Dylan Parham potentially. Like if they draft a safety, maybe that means they don't like Dane Belton as much as you would think. If they draft a corner, Azzy Thomas, like you can attach like a rookie to a guy on the roster and be like, okay, this tells me that maybe they're not as high in this other guy as we thought. And so that's going to be the fascinating part for me, like the depth chart and what it says about what they think about the guys on the roster right now.
This one comes from Brian Sternback, which is should fans assume that the Jets are done with the starting components of the offensive line and defensive line? I should have looped this one actually in when we were talking about this, Zach. I don't think they're done at guard. I mean, if the right interior offensive lineman falls to them, I could see that being the pick as well. I think that's a selection for them where they could find somebody. And the second round's a great spot for a guard. And I don't look. Myers had a better than expected season last year. When you look at him analytically, it still wasn't a very good year. And I still think that Joe Tippmann's best future in the NFL is at center. He's an okay guard, better at center, like AVT. Great guard, okay tackle, one of those things. I think that you are... Look, if they had to go play this is a Joe Shane comment, but like if they had to go play a football game tomorrow, the Jets could. That's a big thing for Darren Muji. And that's a testament to both Muji and Glenn, is that they're in a position right now where if they had to go play a football game, they can. And because of that, and I don't think they'd be an awful football team either if they had to go play a football game tomorrow. Not great, but I don't think they'd be awful. Now you can truly let the board fall where it does, where you can find situations where, say, the right offensive guard falls to you. you can improve the guard position, and suddenly you got a better guard. If the right corner falls to you, you can improve the corner position. If the right interior defensive lineman falls, I think they're done at defensive end, but if the right interior defensive lineman falls, you can take the interior defensive lineman. Like, you can do those things now because of the way the roster is currently constructed.
Yeah. They have a lot of flexibility with this pick, I would say, and so they still can go with the best player on the board because, as you've said over and over, like, if you look across the roster, especially on defense, you don't have a lot of guys that you're like, this guy's going to be here in 2028, I would say. So get the best guy on the board other than offensive tackle. Like, you could say almost any other position. There's not going to be a quarterback that's the best player on the board, so you eliminate those two spots in tight end. And, that leaves you with, you could potentially get a good receiver, offensive lineman, defensive lineman, linebacker, safety, blah, blah, blah. I think they're in a good spot if they stay at 44.
All right, we see these questions here. James Walsh, and these are the last three we're going to take. James Walsh, Charleston, Jets, Rebel, and then Jake Brown. Or actually, sorry, not Jake Brown. Jake's got a Breece Hall question, so we're going to take that one. But it's quarterback questions. So the big guys that are left is you got Beck, you got Drew Aller, and you got a couple of the physical freaks, man. Zach, do you think that the Jets end up adding a quarterback here? I know somebody asked, I think it's James Walsh wanted to know if Carson Beck's an option at 44. I still believe, based off of everything we've seen from the Jets, that if they're going to take a quarterback, it's going to be on day 3. And I think if you're looking for the quarterback you want to take on day 3, it's the big-bodied, physical, strong-armed guy that just needs time to develop, that Frank wants to get his hands on to see if he can't turn him into something. I've been saying it for a while, like, that description reads pretty closely to what Drew Aller is. And so I think that Drew Aller would be a good option for the Jets, but a good option for the Jets on day 3. I don't, this isn't reporting, this is just my opinion. I don't think the Jets should, and nor do I think the Jets will take a quarterback here on day 2. I think that'd be a bad idea. Unless maybe it's late in the third round, then fine, but not in the second.
So earlier in the week, I did a story on all the work they done on quarterbacks, and I found this old article where Frank Reich, when he was the Colts coach, laid out the 5 traits he looks for in quarterbacks. And so,
who wrote that? Do you remember who wrote that? I don't know. I'm putting
Zack
on the spot
Kiefer,
now.
actually. Zack Kiefer.
Okay. Probably unbelievable. Yeah. Zach is real quick.
He's the best.
Zach is the best feature writer in our business. I know he was covering the Colts for. He is the single best feature writer, I think, in the NFL right now. Zach's unbelievable. So as soon as you said his name, I was like, actually, send me the link when we're off here. I want to read that.
Yeah, I will. But so he said, number 1, toughness, mental and physical. Number 2, he had what he called accelerated vision, which is his wording for how fast do you think on your feet. Number 3 was accuracy. You have, fitting in the tight windows. Number 4 was footwork. You have to look at the feet. Most sports are played from the ground up, blah, blah, blah. And intangibles was the leadership. Are you a playmaker in big moments? He's not mentioning the size there. I know there's a history of it. Yeah, that's kind of like
maybe not Drew Aller.
Because it's funny because I went through and I don't watch these guys as closely as Dane Brugler, so I looked at what he said and let's see, he fell short in Reich's categories included. He wrote that he had messy footwork, streaky ball placement, inconsistent rhythm, and that he sabotages himself with late decision making. But I bring that up because it actually made me think Garrett Nussmeier actually makes a lot. If you remove the size part of it, because he is undersized, but Garrett Nussmeier, he's tough, he's competitive, he has really good accuracy. He's kind of a gunslinger. He can fit into tight windows. It gets him into trouble sometimes because then he tries to do that all the time. He's got really good intangibles. He's really quick. He threw at 2.48 seconds average times to throw. He fits pretty well in those 5 categories. So and they did work him out privately. We don't know what they thought about it. We don't know what they think about any of these guys technically. We just know which guys they did private workouts with and things like that. So
it's the ones they cancel they draft.
Yeah. That got my antenna up though, is what I'm saying. So I don't know that Nussmeier will be there. You don't pick him in the second round unless you love him. If he's there in the 4th round at the top, I don't know. I'm intrigued by him as a prospect. He was a guy that was supposed to be a first round pick a year ago. He's had some injury stuff as well. At that point, you're going to get a flawed quarterback, and so I like the idea of him as a developmental backup. And I don't hate the idea of Aller just because he has the traits, he physically looks the part, athletically, he has the arm strength. I just think Nussmeier is probably a better quarterback today than Aller is.
The other part of this too that wasn't in Frank Reich's system is the list that Zack made and it's probably the most important thing that he's looking for a quarterback is which one will frustrate our producer Jeff Goldman the most. And I think that's the one where you add Drew Aller into them. I mean, that's going to tilt I know footwork's important and accuracy too, but that's the one that kind of is circled, bolded, and underlined a few times. So that's why I still think it's going to be Aller. But no, actually, that's a great find, Zach. That really is a good find. And shout out Zach. I mean, Kiefer. Like he's an unbelievable writer. So like I truly like he writes things, dude. He's one of those people where you and I talked about this before. Like I forget what story you wrote. I texted you about it. It was one of the ones recent, like within the last 2 or 3 months. I said like anytime you read,
he had that Gruden one. He had that Gruden one that blew up.
Yeah, but like anytime you write anything like in this field, because we're all in it, we're all competitive. We love each other, but we're competitive. Like you read something, and like I'll read something you write or somebody else writes, and you're like, it's a good story, I love it, but like I feel like I could have written it better. I had a similar angle. I could have done this too. Like you naturally compare yourself to what you're writing. Remember, I told you about this the other day. Like, you wrote something the other day, and it pissed me off so much. It was a few months ago. And I remember reading it, being like, damn, I don't think I could have done that better. Like, oh, that irked me. Like, it irked me. Zack is one of those where, like, I try not even to read his stuff because I'm like, I can't write like this. Like, just it's unbelievable. Like, he is. It's so detailed, but not overwritten. Like, he's just. I know this is gonna be a Zack Kiefer podcast here, but like, yeah, he's unbelievable. So I highly recommend any Jet fan go look at him because he's truly one of the best in our business. Real quick here before we wrap up, Zack, I'm going to run through the best available players. This is, I believe it's per Adam Schefter right now, the best player available just considered across the NFL. And then I'll go through real quick if any of them jump out to you. Obviously, the Jets are picking 12th overall here in the second round. Wide receiver Denzel Boston, edge Zion Young, linebacker CJ Allen, Jermod McCoy, again, asterisk there because of his knee issue. I heard he might fall away to the third round. Avion Terrell, Emmanuel McNeil Warren, Colton Hood. I know the Jets have done a lot of work on him. Caden McDonald, keep an eye on him for the New York Giants. Cassius Howell, TJ Parker, Emmanuel Pregnan, Jake Golday, and Christian Miller. Anybody there that particularly stands out to you?
I would say, I mean, the safety Emmanuel McNeil Warren is intriguing to me. Like, I think he was someone who people thought would go in the first round. It just depends on what the Jets. I don't think the Jets necessarily feel like they need another safety because they traded for Minka, signed Dame Belton, brought back Andre Sisco, and don't forget about Malachi Moore, who Aaron Glenn really likes. So that is 4 safeties, but he's a really talented, tall, playmaking safety. So it's a good value if he fell to 44.
No, it's not going to happen. I was like, what would you feel like if like for whatever reason Denzel's there and they take him, they go Boston and God, that'd turn Jet fans. Yeah. It would be fun. It'd be fun. It's almost like I was joking with my my boss. I was in studio yesterday. I was talking to him, not a Giants pod, but I said, I was like, man, if the Giants sign Odell Beckham, like that first week of training camp is going to be fun. Like that is just going to be storyline fodder and page view gold and videos of Neighbors and Beckham and Jackson, and it's going to be a fun one. But that would be a good one. I looking at this, I mean, I like Allen at linebacker. I like Colton Hood, like I've said multiple times, at corner. I like those guys as well. And then if you wanted to go with Pregnan to get a guard there to shore up your long-term future, I think that's something I would keep an ie on there. I know it's a lot of resources to be invested in your offensive line, where it's 2 first-round picks at tackle, theoretically a first-round pick at center, and now, second-round pick at center with Tittman, and now a second-round pick at guard. But I don't care, man. Build the wall so when you get the rookie, you don't have to worry about him getting hurt and getting knocked out of games. Anything you want to add here, Zack, before we wrap this one up?
No, yeah, I'm curious to see who they pick today. But 3 rookies. They're gonna have some press conferences today. I'll be doing flight plan again tonight after their picks, after their press conferences and stuff. So it might be another late one, but appreciate all the sickos who stick around and podcast with me. So
there we go. Absolutely, dude. All right, so that's going to do it for this episode of Jets Final Drive. We thank you guys so much for joining us, and that is wherever you decided to join us from, whether that is SNY.TV, whether that is X, or where that is YouTube. If you are over here on YouTube, you either made your way here from SNY or you made your way here from Twitter. Make sure that you subscribe to SNY's YouTube channel because you will get access to our complete catalog of digital content. The Knicks are making me more and more depressed by a daily basis, but hey, Ian Begley is going to try to provide some therapy there on the putback. It's Mets season, Yankee season, all that fun stuff, so we've got a ton of clips from Sports Night. Also, our Jets draft shows. You can watch clips from that where I'm breaking it down. Connor Rogers, Bart Scott, Willie Colon, all that fun stuff with Steve Galbs, and then Nikki and Chelsea as well. So SNY's YouTube channel, it is the place to be. Make sure you guys go there. As far as Zack and I, make sure you keep following Zack over at The Athletic and on his Twitter. You can follow me as well. We're going to have Jets drafts coverage, Giants draft coverage, all of that stuff. The plan right now, if I'm not mistaken, is to come back to you guys with a complete draft JF Day recap show on Monday. That time is to follow, so we will keep you guys posted on that. So he is Zack Rosenblatt. I am Connor Hughes. A huge thank you to our entire production team of Sam Candell and Jeff Goldman and Corey Palmer and everybody else over at SMY. Thank you guys for hanging out with us, and we will see you on Monday.